Welcome to The Holistic Nurse with your host, Peggy Smith. Peggy will introduce and educate her viewers about the differences between alternative, holistic, and complementary medical therapies. Her goal is to empower the lay medical consumer to learn how to advocate for themselves. So now, please welcome the host of The Holistic Nurse, Peggy Smith.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to The Holistic Nurse with Peggy Smith. And joining me today is Dr. Gloria Warren, our medical epidemiologist. She'll be helping us discuss our topic today. The Holistic Nurse is where we talk about exploring health through the lens of the whole human body and mind, environment, and lifestyle, and how they all work together and sometimes don't work together very well if they get in the way. What if one biological process was quietly influencing the most common diseases of modern life? I'd like to welcome Dr. Gloria Warren today. We're going to be going through some symptoms, and I welcome Gloria. It's good to see you again.
Well, it's good to be
A
here.
lot of
Thank you.
times when people have chronic conditions, they expect to have them. They grow up saying, oh, Aunt Mary and Uncle Joe, they, have COPD and diabetes, and I'm just waiting for my turn. Hope I have insurance by then. Doesn't always work that way, as we're finding out recently. But conditions seem very different. I've known people that, by no common sense of reason or logic, it seems like they should be bedbound and, calling hospice by the words on their diagnosis. And yet they can run marathons and, accomplish so much more than I do on a good day. So conditions are very different. There's not like one description of what heart disease is. If Dr. Gloria has heart disease, and she's treating it one way, and I have a related disease, peripheral vascular disease, I might be treating it the same way with the traditional medical care, or or we might be looking at some factors like, do we just have to wait till we get what Uncle Joe had? And that's what we want to share with you today. Common diseases: diabetes, arthritis, brain fog, autoimmune conditions, which covers multiple sclerosis, CIDP, Parkinson's even. Cancer is considered an autoimmune disease. People don't always realize that. And even memory problems. They all share a common biological force that drives behind them and affects the way we perceive ourselves when we're going through the experience. And that process is called inflammation, but it's not the kind that most people think. And Gloria, would you like to describe what the
I just wanted to add something to that. Could you
Okay.
tell? No. This is what I love about your show. You humanize these topics and you bring them down to real life. I mean, that's to me is simply amazing. Most people don't do that. And I love hearing Uncle Joe and this one and that one, but it's true. Everything you say, you always add that little extra spark that brings it home. Thank you for that. So,
Well, I think
yeah,
what I've learned as a nurse for 45 years is that people are often intimidated by their relationship with their doctors. They put the doctors either on a pedestal or in the trash can, depending on how you like them. Uh, but either way, you can't identify with God in that way. You're both dealing with the human things, and
right.
the doctor that maybe isn't resonating with you, you're not hurting anybody but yourself, just ignoring what he says and not finding out if you have alternatives. And we all have a lot of alternatives we may not be able to avoid the hereditary genes that we have, but certainly we can lessen the way they are expressed in our bodies and our lives today.
Right. And
Inflammation, people think when you talk about inflammation, oh, you're going to tell me to go on an anti-inflammatory diet, and, I should give up my pickleball, maybe I wouldn't have so many injuries. And, I'm just pushing my body too hard, trying to be healthy, and, it's backfiring. So, and I shouldn't exercise at all. You can talk yourself into a lot of things. But it's not just swelling after an injury. And it's like a low-grade chronic inflammation that it feels like it sneaks up suddenly. And maybe that's a good way to look at it. It sneaks up, but it's there suddenly when you notice it. But it's been there a long time, and wasn't sudden. Uh, we've talked in the past how I just worked too hard yesterday or carried too many groceries. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Researchers sometimes refer to the process of inflammation as the silent fire.
Hence your title. It's wonderful. Absolutely.
And actually, what I'm drinking today is warm water and lemon juice, which was my late mother's solution to every sort of inflammation and pain that she had. And it works. I can attest to that. But just like a small fire that burns slowly under the ground, like maybe like an oil well fire, so that you don't see it right away, it gradually reaches all parts of your body, affects all your organ tissues. And I guess we can blame that on the wonderful circulatory system we were blessed with, because as it's taking our blood around, we're kind of pushing other things to other areas. That's why maybe when you have a routine doctor's appointment and he's testing your lymph nodes and they're tender, that's usually one of the first signs we realize that, oh, maybe something is a little bit off. But we're going to look at what inflammation really is and why it develops and how our modern life is not that much of an improvement over the caveman days. um,
I'm sure they had that problem too. So,
and they were too busy, carving stone into wheels. And, so I would imagine my shoulders would hurt if I was pushing concrete
ugh,
like that. But
yeah.
if we can understand what the changes that we think about health and how we react to our symptoms and what we can do to either eliminate or even avoid symptoms because we're thinking prior to doing something that might, result in an injury of some sort. Um,
Mhm.
People feel like inflammation is something that needs to be eliminated. So you got anti-inflammatory drugs, your NSAIDs, naproxen, ibuprofen, things like that. And yes, they're in the class of anti-inflammatory drugs, but as they're anti-inflammatory in your shoulder, they're eating up your stomach and causing more problems there.
Kidneys,
And
yeah.
for people that do get relief from that, and so it does work for some people, it should not be long term and should always be taken with at least milk and crackers or some sort of food, so that your body's acids will not eat your body instead of the pill that you're trying to coat. Biologically, inflammation is actually one of the body's most important part of the immune system response. And that's actually Dr. Gloria's specialty. When I was in
So,
first grade, I was impressed with the first grade teacher's thing about these little bubbles with white bubbles that were eating, the splinter that you had in your finger. And I
mhm,
never forgot that image, but it's a little bit more sophisticated than that. Would you
right.
like to
Your
share?
body sends fluid to those areas that if you have a sore shoulder or a bruised arm or a hurt finger or something, your body sends all that fluid there for a reason. That's your stem cells are in the fluid. And it actually is sent there to repair. So if you cut your finger per se, and the body activates an inflammatory response, the response to the inflammation. First, the blood flow increases because it's that clear liquid comes from the blood. And then when the tissue is injured, the body activates two overlapping processes. For instance, um, homeostasis, it stops bleeding if there's any bleeding. Inflammation is immune response, just as Peggy said. These happen within seconds to minutes from the time you injure it. It doesn't mean to completely stop it. If you want to hinder it a little bit so you cut off your circulation to that body part or whatever, that's fine. But um, we have a lot of times when you have inflammation, it's the same response when you cut yourself. So you get vasoconstriction with a blood vessel temporarily narrows, reduces blood flow, platelet activation, stops it, starts the clot, coagulation cascade. But then the inflammation sets in. Immune defense and repair after bleeding is controlled, then the body activates the inflammatory tissue, prevents infection, and blood vessels dilate.
I think
So
as you're talking, you're experiencing inflammation in your shoulder, and you're actually naturally soothing the part.
Going over to and my shoulders are fine. It's just psychosomatic, I guess, right?
Our
Which
minds
is
are very
also something that
suggestive.
adds.
And I want to insert a little thing about home first aid here as we're describing
Hmm.
situations. For people that are on anticoagulants, the Coumadins, the Plavix,
Hmm.
Eliquis's, things like that, it's important to know that if you have a cut, it's not going to necessarily stop with a simple Band-Aid or, a Coban wrap around it. Uh, so if you have somebody in your family with one of those medications, you should always have a product. One of the names is Bleed Stop. There's a couple different. There's some CVS
Yeah.
brand. It's something that helps coagulate your blood a little bit, similar to like what your dog groomer might when he cuts the nail too close, or the styptic pen that my father used to have when he was shaving. It stops the bleeding, and you have to be aware if you're on a blood thinner may not necessarily be an ER emergency if you just calm down and slow your breathing down and get that powder on it. If it doesn't respond, then it does become an emergency. Um,
Hmm.
and with we've been trying to teach over the shows just how to be more aware of listening to your body. And, that'll be a good part to show what we're going to deal with these things. Um, Inflammation, as it's when the body is controlled, then that's the inflammatory phrase that you just talked about, Gloria. And
Hmm.
I remember as a kid, we've had another part of the first aid box. We had those two orange things that your mother would paint on your knees when you skin your knee. One burned like you know what, and the other one was
Mercurochrome.
yeah, mercurochrome and methylate. And
Yeah.
you always say, don't give me the one that burns. But
Hmm.
actually, that we've learned over the years, you notice that product's not for sale anymore. Um, it does more damage. It eats the tissues you're trying to keep clean. Another common product that's often used over minor cuts and scrapes is hydrogen peroxide. And when I was younger, and even the beginning years of nursing, I was a proponent of that too. Hydrogen peroxide actually also eats the good tissue away, and so you have to keep it clean, but you don't want to use those two products unless you had nothing else. I mean, so you don't want to pour pure alcohol.
Mhm.
See in the movies, somebody gets a gunshot wound or something, they pour the bottle of whiskey in it. Well, the purpose is to clean out the inflammation and the
Then
germs,
they
but
pour some down their throat. Yeah.
for the pain,
Oh, I
that's
gotta help
right.
with that pain.
So
So
yeah,
typical back then. I keep a bottle of emergency vodka in case of national disaster, but hey, if you don't have anything else, it works. Peroxide actually kills 100% of all the germs. It's great for if you get deep puncture wounds to irrigate it, but then not again, because like Peggy said, it will damage the healing cells, and you want to keep the healing cells. You just want to kill off any type lockjaw that you're getting in there, or tetanus per se, and so many other things get in there. Yeah, within reason, of course, if you do have it.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
as we're looking at the healing process, moving on, the initial the vasoconstriction when the bloods are trying itself to reduce the tighten it. Then we have the
Mhm.
clot formation, and a lot of times people say, oh, good, it's clotted off. Well, you actually have a danger there of clotting off before all the germs are out. And then you have like a super infection in the spot, not, right, like you're getting infected, but it's not because you cut yourself. It's because you didn't let air get to it and didn't let the bad stuff out. So a lot of times, if you don't even notice a splinter, for example. Your body knows it's there and it's starting to swell up and turn red and it's
Mhm.
hurting you. And then you look and say, oh, is there something on my finger? When did I do
Mhm.
that? And we're going to come right back in 30 seconds and we'll continue the conversation of how we're going to build our immune system and stop the inflammatory process. Thank you.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals.
So we're talking in the beginning, we described short-term and protective inflammation. That is a good thing, and it's a necessary and natural part of healing. But there are problems when inflammation becomes chronic. And a lot of times your symptoms, I think, are obvious. But chronic inflammation occurs when the immune system is activated just nonstop for prolonged periods. Some people that might just be even a few weeks or months, and some people it could be years. And, especially sometimes parents fall into that. They're so busy dealing with life day to day and taking caregivers, and you just miss the things that are happening in your own body. But the body, instead of helping repair itself, the inflammatory process becomes destructive, and it starts it just influences the normal cellular functions and actually changes their whole role, because your body's constantly trying to adapt to what you need to stay healthy. And you're giving a mixed message at this situation. Scientists have linked the chronic inflammation to a wide range of modern health things: colitis, cardiovascular disease, metabolic disorders, most of the autoimmune disorders. One of my autoimmune patients, when I was first being introduced to that process, described that it's like being allergic to myself all the time. Simple allergies is an autoimmune process.
Yeah.
I have a dog who's allergic to herself. She happens to squat on the grass. She's got like a strawberry rash down there, because she's allergic to grass. But there's neurodegenerative conditions, and like ALS, lupus, even that's not neuro, but that has some chronic pain syndromes. Research now look at inflammation as the central biological process that's under many chronic illnesses. But it doesn't begin suddenly. It often comes slowly and just keeps going. Health is influenced by far more than medical care. Lifestyle, nutrition, environmental exposures, stress we have every day, educational programs that focus on self-sustainability, environmental health, and lifestyle awareness help us better understand and learn how we can improve and have less inflammatory challenges to deal with day to day. By learning how to influence our daily habits, long-term well-being, then as an individual, a consumer of healthcare, you can actually make informed decisions about what works best for you. So we're going to be talking about educational opportunities that help you understand the body-environment connection, why chronic inflammation develops, and why people just assume it's natural. And there's even cultural influences with that. Certain people, ethnic backgrounds, including ones that I was associated with growing up. I think you were too, Gloria. Certain cultures think that it's redemptive, and you'll get shorter time in purgatory if you believe in that process, if you're suffering on earth. And a nurse, I have told hundreds of people, no, it's okay. God did not want you to suffer. and purgatory was a man-made solution to explain your suffering.
Right.
So, you want to talk a little bit about chronic stress?
Sure. Chronic stress is when the body experiences prolonged stress. Hormones, such as cortisol and adrenaline, they remain elevated. You know, I just wanted to slip this in here. There is a difference between inflammation and swelling. Okay, inflammation is when the body's trying to heal something quickly, swells up and the vessels dilate. Swelling itself, though, uh, it does not include any type of um, immunity response to heal or pathogens. Usually, inflammatory responses involve some kind of pathogen type of swelling. That's why they call it inflammation. So, an inflammation, like let's say my shoulder's all swollen up and it's all red, and my body's trying to heal it. It's an inflammatory response, but that's because if it doesn't heal it right away, you can end up with an infection in your joint or whatever because the circulation otherwise wouldn't be enough to keep the tissue healthy. So, as a lab rat, born and raised, um, I kind of realize the differences about that and just wanted just us to mention that once. But when those elevated hormones happen over time, it can influence immune responses and inflammatory pathways. Another factor is poor sleep, which I know Peggy and myself, we are both um, on that
You're
line
excellent
at
on
some
poor
point.
sleep, and it's not a good habit to copy.
Right, right. It's our busy lives, and how many people out there are you guys too busy to even realize you need your sleep? You don't get enough. I'm sure most people don't get enough. And then we can have a chronic problem that's in turn. Sleep's one of the body's most important recovery scenarios, mechanisms. During deep sleep, the body forms cellular repair, immune regulation. So if you're hypersensitive to everything, you have Crohn's disease or MS or something else that is an immune disposition problem, then maybe you're not getting enough sleep too, or maybe it's just too much stress, like Peggy mentioned earlier. But it's a metabolic balancing. When sleep becomes disrupted, inflammatory markers may begin to rise. And then let's say you hurt yourself. That inflammation is going to be worse than if you were getting enough sleep. It's a problem. And
And sometimes
nutrition roles.
actually positive things, like say you have a new baby, bring it home. Nobody's going to get a lot of
Mhm.
sleep in the
Oh,
beginning,
yeah, right.
but
So true.
especially you have the propensity genetically or just experience-wise to be dealing with postpartum depression, which affects more women than we publicize. The
Mhm.
combination of poor sleep, having the postpartum depression, which actually is hormonally and chemically based. It's not just because you're upset that you have another mouth to feed. It's real. That it doesn't mean you're not a fit mother and you can't handle your responsibilities, but it just means until the birth process is such a hormonal process, and it takes your body longer to get back to homeostasis with your hormones, which
Yeah.
has the same situation. So it's important to know that there are times in your life you're going to have poor sleep. Uh, but be gentle with yourself, make arrangements with relatives to help you. You're not the only person that can change the baby's diaper. If the baby's sleeping, you sleep, whether it's 10 o'clock in the morning or whatever.
Right.
Or you get, maybe there's older siblings in the home or family members that just need to understand that you're not going crazy, because there is a higher recorded incident of child abuse, which can be avoided if everybody understands that you're not a
Mhm.
bad person. You're just experiencing something that you might even need some traditional medical intervention to help you through the rough spots in those situations.
My
Um,
my my answer to that, well, if it's my husband, kick him out. Take care of the baby. That's more important. No, sorry. There are hotlines for that.
yeah.
So,
Well,
what about
learning to
nutrition
set,
though?
we've talked in other shows about how important setting boundaries is to everything from
Mhm.
controlling stress and, improving life in general. And, you know, contr- that it's appropriate for this situation too, I think. But
Right.
it's important that you just know that you're not a bad person because you're having these challenges.
Yeah, it's a lot of it's your hormones doing it to your brain. It's not you. It's the hormones, and you just need to negate those ideas because you have to realize it's your hormones that play that with your brain.
And
So,
plays an important role in inflammation. Good example is teachers dread Halloween when it falls on a school night because everybody gets all sugared up and,
yeah,
teachers will come out even the day after to avoid having to deal with this.
no,
Um,
sorry. Yeah, parents.
that's sugar, high sugars, when you're already probably in a rush lifetime eating more processed food than you would like to eat. Um,
Mhm.
you know, I had a patient just this past week dealing with Crohn's disease, and I asked him what he eats normally and what kind of diet he's on. He said, "My doctor said I can eat whatever I want, that the medicine you're giving
Mhm.
me will fix the problem." Uh, Medicine needs help too. It's man
Yeah,
made. The nutrition philosophies didn't come from science, they came from really the universe. Some of us were born with common sense at one time in this universe.
right. Sometimes it's good to avoid having the problem as high of a level, an extreme level, bring it down so it's less medication, so your body won't have negative. All medications have some negative effects and positive effects, you know. So we sometimes it's better to lower that medication and actually do a lot through nutrition if you can. That's up to you and your medical professional, of course. Well,
Well,
we're lucky to have Peggy here.
environmental exposures are another important consideration. And, like if you're like I said a couple weeks ago, if you're a
Mhm,
shift worker, police, emergency response, nurses, healthcare people, one of your environmental things is the sleep issue because you're bouncing different schedules around. You're not having one consistent time. Uh, but other things, we need everybody that works. We need the chemical engineers that maybe are getting exposed to things in the lab that they shouldn't
mhm.
be. Uh, it's and it's not just being. I guess a lot of it is the amount of exposure that you have.
And your
Um,
home has a lot of exposure, so air filtration systems, only natural oils and not these fragrances that mess around with your hormones. There again, any fragrances, any sprays you put, hairspray even, just be careful and minimize in your home environment for the air pollutants and compounds.
And for people that are caregivers in other people's homes, I
Yeah.
always like to remind, sometimes they need to be reminded because they don't do it deliberately, but there are many people sensitive to those high perfume smells, high, or different odors.
Mhm.
Sometimes their particular illness makes you more sensitive to that. But if you're a caregiver, you go to somebody's home, you don't realize that I myself am allergic to perfume, but if I'm around somebody or in a tight closed space with high perfume and things, I'm going to have asthma problems, which is an asthma. We didn't bring that up. That's another autoimmune and inflammatory process that's common for many people. Um,
Right.
so the body has certain detoxification systems, but just continue. It's like your oil filter eventually has to be changed in your car. People, you guys must think I'm a mechanic or something. I often use car examples. Well, no, I'm often at the mechanics because I forget that my oil filter needs to be changed and things like that. But your body
Oh,
has the equivalent of oil filters that need to be cleaned out and changed. Uh, and a lot of times people that modern nutrition, the label says you're eating healthy foods, but you don't realize you know, organic doesn't necessarily mean it's 100% organic, but regardless what the label says.
yeah.
Um, it it means that the government has allowed us to pass a certain level of things that aren't healthy. Before I was a nurse, I was actually a quality control research inspector in a Brussels sprouts factory in California. And my first day in the job, they told me that I'm supposed to pass 25% glass, dirt, and bugs in these Brussels sprouts. I have to tell you, to this
Mhm.
day, I fresh Brussels sprouts. um, and we learned the same thing with baby food. We've improved baby food a lot, but
Mm,
when those were in the glass jars, the inspectors were allowed to pass a certain amount of broken glass, which is inevitable if you're working with glass jars in a
yeah.
product. Um,
Recently, they found that just wanted to slip this in when you mentioned baby food. Recently, they found that most of those baby foods, even I can mention all the common name brands and the ones that say they're organic, most of them came up very high with pesticides, glyphosates, and they also are using now glycol and doxycetyl in them. So you need to be careful. And I had to call my daughter-in-law, and she's like, "No, no, I'm gonna make all my own baby foods." I'm like, "Oh, thank God." But and the other thing, that also causes oxidative stress that increases inflammation in your body, this is still in the experimental phases, and that's lab-grown foods and proteins. And animals out there, their immunity builds as they're grass feeding out in the fields. But if you're taking something in their cells and making something out of it in the lab, the immunity is not transferred and you're not eating anything that has some natural immunities. Just a thought.
oh, okay,
Information's a good
gonna take another break right now. Uh,
plug. Sorry.
no, that's okay because that's a
Yeah.
good topic. We're going to continue with that topic. Thank you.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like it was almost instant, like I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Hi, welcome back to the Holistic Nurse with Peggy Smith and Dr. Gloria Warren as we're discussing how inflammation affects just all kinds of common illnesses. And we were just talking about, processed foods, the baby food things. With other processed foods, we pay a price for convenience. I see people pay more money for decaf coffee, and you know, I'll disclose I'm not a coffee drinker, but I do know from research that decaf coffee only has 3% less caffeine than traditional coffee. And to get that 3% out, you're actually putting some chemicals in that do that for you. Gloria's the expert on that part of it. But I think all processed foods, that's the challenge. You're either gonna but I've also learned, especially, and many people are learning now that the economy is a little bit more challenging. It's really not that much more work to make
No.
your own food. I have friends that on Sunday nights they'll take the crock pot, do a whole crock pot of oatmeal for the week, and put it in little containers and store it, freeze it. Just take out one a day, and you've got your breakfast there that's healthy. Just add your bananas and strawberry blueberries. Um, and I do the same thing because my dogs have such diet challenges that on Sundays I'll make the dog food for the whole week, and it's cheaper than some of the whole
Mhm.
food dog foods that you can buy even at Walmart. But it, I buy whatever meat is on sale that they can tolerate, and just throw in the vegetables and things like that. With nothing that is actually traditional dog food. So if I need I'm hungry when I'm done, I can have a dish with them too. And we're one big happy family. But it's actually cheaper in my budget than trying to pay for what,
Mhm.
each dog needs a different diet and things like that. And making, you can, the one pot suppers used to be when my kids were younger, we didn't have as much convenience as we have now. Uh, and I was working full time in the morning when I made the school lunches. I'd start the crock pot. I'd come home at 5 o'clock and the house smelled so good. It was a nice aroma to walk into. And dinner was made that was even nicer. And you just had to find someone to wash the dishes afterwards, but small
Ah,
price. But so
if you know anyone out there. Oh gosh, that'd be great.
yeah,
No,
and
those
sugar,
one
sweeteners,
stop meals though. Thank you for the reminder on that.
one-stop meals is one of the best ways to actually, you know, keep your budget and eat healthy foods without the stress
Hmm.
on your time. Um, so they want to talk briefly about sugars before we move on to the next
Mm.
section. Um, Refined sugar, really refined most type of supplements and foods are not the healthiest for you. I understand some people don't have options, but maybe there's options that you could have less of it. Uh, if you're a diabetic, my husband was a diabetic, and he would eat diet Jello, and if he went shopping, he'd come home with all these diet low sugar things. I threw them in the trash, and told him, no, this actually increases your
Mhm.
sugar because it also overworks your pancreas in a way that it'll do less. So, if you have any function in your pancreas at all, and you're throwing all these dietetic chemicals in, uh, what you like to say about pancreas? Or, uh,
Oh my gosh. These artificial sweeteners, some people think, oh, it's just sucralose. Sucralose can start you on a whole path of autoimmune disorders. It it changes your gut microbiome. And by doing that, the bacteria living in your digestive tract just explodes. It's terrible. And if you have it in your beverages or whatever, and you're drinking it all the time, probiotics is not going to be enough. It's going to hinder your immune regulation over everything in your body. I mean, Crohn's disease and or inflammatory gut syndrome, or there's so many different things on that list. So something that may seem simple, if I had to choose between all of these, like aspartame, sucralose, saccharin, sulfame, potassium, I would choose saccharin if I had to. And believe it or not, the lab results were never even looked at when it was banned. It was a corporate monopoly out there. They didn't want saccharin released, so that's why they were able to bring it back, because they had to prove that it was, grass, generally
another
recognized as
sweetener
safe.
that people that are watching their sugar, there's stevia, there's the other one that starts with S. It's a product
Mhm.
of for the monk fruit is what these products are made from.
Yeah.
And recently, all the companies merged together. So no matter what label is on
You're
there,
not getting that. Yeah, very
uh,
little.
you're getting the same product in every bag.
Right,
So you might as well just look for the best price if that's really what you want to buy.
right.
Um, but it's like one of them says, whatever the product was, grown on the farms of whatever used to be known for that product, and
Right,
it's the same thing. So really look at your labels carefully.
right.
I
Aspartame is a known Alzheimer's
right.
trigger, and sucralose, you were mentioning
Agave
pancreas.
syrup is a
Mhm.
good alternative, and so is the sugar
Love
here.
agave.
And agave is great, but you don't use as much as maybe you would use of an artificial liquid sweetener because a little goes a long way. So even if you paid a little more for the bottle, it's going to last you a lot longer.
Right,
Um,
right.
how about the ultra processed seed oils? What do you recommend for?
Oh, I don't recommend any seed oils because all seed oils contain lectins. Lectins are terrible for your body. It actually contributes to gut swelling and intestinal swelling. So the uptake of nutrients is lessened to your bloodstream and also causes autoimmune disorders. So I'm a big believer in really good olive oil from Greece or Italy.
I use
Rome.
olive oil, and I've recently started using coconut oil too. Like if I
Oh
wanted to
yeah,
heat up my pan before I fry the
beautiful.
eggs or something. And they're really economically reasonable, and it's much healthier.
Hmm.
Everybody got excited about sprays that lubricate your pans and everything. Well, now there's actually a spray with 100% olive oil in it because they said, well, if they're
Mm.
going to only buy the sprays, let's make it a healthy spray.
Mm.
So the marketers are watching. Pesticide that's in our food, even the organic foods.
Mm.
Is there anything we
Yeah.
can do about
Yeah.
besides
The
put them
problem
on?
with pesticides is, let's say this is one company, and let's say they are an organic company, and everything they're doing is organic, but they're outsourcing all the products that go into their product. They have no control over how many pesticides the other products use. They can tell them that we don't use pesticides, but in actuality, they may be using heavy pesticides. So they're finding now that most of the organic products on the open market have pesticides in them, and some of them at very high levels. So this unfortunately can trigger inflammatory responses as well.
And so I don't have a green thumb, so yeah, I can kill a cactus in the wintertime,
I've never
But
heard that one before.
for people that usually, I did kill a cactus one winter. Forgot
Mm.
to bring it in the window. Sat in the snow all night long. But the people that want to try to grow their own, is that a solution to avoiding pesticides, or is there?
Well,
What
we
would you
have
say?
to realize we live in a very chemical filled world. So we have plastics coming down in the rain. We can grow our own foods if we have the space and we want to try. That may be an option for people. And it is going to most likely be cleaner food. You just cannot use pesticides. You can use natural pesticides. Like my one friend who's on my team for Sustainability Management Institute, she's the agricultural expert for Colorado. And she developed a natural pesticide formula that they use on thousands of acres now, thank goodness. And it's basically essence oils, and she just, has a mixture just right, and they spray it on their crops and it works well. So natural pesticides.
Okay, and I know I've seen on the market natural rodent uh,
Deterrents,
repellent,
yeah.
things like that, pepper and oil, things like that work. Um,
Hmm.
so, I mean, what can you present? Because we don't have a lot of time, like maybe a positive way of living our life healthier, so that
Absolutely. So, for food packaging, glass, just go back to the old-fashioned little glass Pyrex containers or square containers. They sell them. Yes, they have a plastic lid, but at least it's less plastic in your system. And then use natural pesticides. And as far as food, you want to limit or minimize inflammation. Go to foods that are simple. I call it simples. I did a show on that actually. Simples. Sit and simmer a chicken breast or any if I'm not a big hater of animal fat. So animal fat because your brain's made of fat. I think your body needs fat. Just what I think. Anyways, though, I would just simply make uh I cook different parts of chicken or I boil them and then I'll take it out. Next day I usually eat my food cold because when you reheat, they've proven toxins actually will increase as you reheat. So I chop it up, I make a cold chicken salad or throw it over salad or something like that. And there's a lot of things that you can do. Everything that's bad out there, there's good things you can do for it. And that's what we have to consider
when you
too. I
mentioned the
have.
plastic, the food sealing
Mhm.
thing, is that? I mean, it's a good concept. I love it. You say, but is food
Right.
if you're sealing your food, the keep the air out and all that, are we getting side effects from the plastic of that stuff that's sealing it?
Well, all plastic have an off gas, they off gas. That means giving off gases. So, yeah, you still would get a certain amount, but a lot less than you would get if your whole food was sitting the moisture and everything on the plastic itself. But, it's just one way to lower the level of intake. Plastic never leaves your body. And can lead to Alzheimer's. It can lead to many different diseases because it gets accumulated in your internal organs, systems. So it hinders the inflammatory response, which can take longer to heal when you do get injured.
Well, if that process is hard to visualize, if we just think about our waterways and, the seagulls, the beaches, and all the plastic that's on the beaches and what it's done to nature, and
Right.
realize that that's kind of what's happening in our body.
Yeah.
So we take steps, many of us, to improve the environment for the birds and everything, but we don't realize we're doing the same thing to ourselves on a smaller scale, but enough to still cause an issue.
Maybe after the commercial, though, you can actually talk and give them more information. There's so much more that I know you know. I don't think you can fit in one show. So,
okay, we'll be right back. Thank you, Gloria.
Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like, it was almost instant. Like, I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Welcome back to the Holistic Nurse with Peggy Smith and Dr. Gloria Warren, and we're discussing how inflammation can kind of upset the balance here. And
yeah, we have so much to discuss, but we decided this is something that we would like everybody to know, right? So, one of the challenges is that often it develops quietly and you don't really notice it, but there are some early warning signs. So, I'm sure everybody out there can, such as persistent fatigue, where you're just so tired every day and you think it's poor nutrition or whatever, and it may be. And hydration is always the first defense. And then brain fog. Happens all the time to me. Joint stiffness. If you're stiff, maybe that's something you need to work on. Like if your shoulder's stiff or whatever, you need to stretch it out. You need to get some circulation in there so it can heal faster. Digestive issues, it could be dietary fiber or many things, but and stress itself, but it is a first precursor, that can lead to inflammation. Skin problems, hydration with that, antioxidant rich foods, minimizing exposure to irritating chemicals. Another one is headaches. I mean, a headache isn't just a headache, it's a signal for something, and it could be an early warning sign. Sleep disturbances. Maybe you're not sleeping well. Maybe you have a hard time getting to sleep. Maybe you need a better routine before you sleep. So maybe stop the caffeine by 2 o'clock and during the day and do a lot of water after that. Who knows? So with the immune, nervous, and endocrine and metabolic system, they're all interconnected. So you got to consider some of those early signs that may need more bodily support.
And bodily isn't just the physical symptoms; it's also the emotional and the non-tangible support for our body, the loving ourselves, accepting ourselves, and just really respecting ourselves the way we would respect anybody, other people, because we often do that, treat other people much better than we treat ourselves. Excuse me here, I'm a little...
Supporting the body's balance, though, is really one of the real keys, and those are an indicator of maybe needing to rebalance.
Okay, well, when you have the symptoms, and instead of asking how do you silence those symptoms, because I call that the ostrich mentality. He buries his head in the sand all the time. And humans don't usually play ostriches very well. I do like the costumes though, they have feathers, but anyway, ask yourself, what is your body responding to? Uh, your body's constantly working to and protect and restore balance when you're not aware of it, not just when you're sleeping, but even throughout the day. Maybe you'll get, you realize your mouth is dry but you didn't realize you were dehydrated till like you're really, really dry. Um,
Mhm.
and alcohol, we talk about not drinking caffeine before bedtime. Of course, most of us, if we're going to take advantage, and participate in that activity, we do it after work in the evenings. But studies show that if you're drinking before you go to sleep, you're not going to have effective restful sleep. So think about that in your calendar. You're planning those out. But we've been talking about ask inside, what is your body responding to? How do I feel right now? It's not my imagination. It's never your imagination. It's reasons your body's giving you subtle signs. Your body's constantly working to restore and protect balance. Sometimes maybe if I haven't had enough vegetables, so I'm going crazy. I'm actually craving vegetables today. What my body's saying, you haven't had enough, that's not your mind being crazy. The key is to learn how to recognize these symptoms, um, and just read your labels, listen to your body, um,
Mhm.
and be good to yourself. Be kind, and you'll live a longer life, a healthier life, and the healthier you are, the fewer medical expenses that are avoidable will happen, and you save money. It's uh, it's all part of all the goals you have. If you live a healthy life and take care of yourself, it'll work out. So we're going to focus this week on when you go, you're at home, work on learning how to recognize the symptoms. Um, just take care of yourself and remember that health begins with awareness, and try to be a little bit more aware of everything. And everybody have a wonderful, healthy life. If this is helpful information, please go to the YouTube channel and share it, like it, and subscribe. We have lots of wonderful ideas, and Dr. Gloria Warren is the Medical Intuitive, her YouTube channel. Both of us kind of complement each other very well. So uh, I hope this has been helpful, and everybody's going to have a healthy week, even if it's short term. You'll forget by next week, but like your New Year's resolution, it's okay. We're all human. Have a great week, guys. Thank you for joining us. Bye.
This has been The Holistic Nurse with host Peggy Smith. Tune in each week where you're encouraged to send in questions and receive private responses and suggestions if appropriate. Here's Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern.